All right, so we're here. Please introduce yourselves. What's going on? Why am I here today?
Well, I'm Abel Cruz. I'm a technical evangelist in DPE, and I'm here with Dave Mitchell from UGS, and also I'm going to let you introduce yourself. Go ahead.
Conor Cunningham, and I work on the SQL Server team. I optimize queries.
Optimize queries. All right, nice job.
Thank you.
Good stuff.
Yeah, so we're here to talk a little bit about great, exciting things that are taking place between Microsoft and UGS. We have a new partnership and want to discuss a little bit about why this is important, what UGS does, and why is that really interesting for our partnership as well as for the developers that have to touch the code that both UGS creates based on their code and based on our technology. So that's what we're here for.
Perfect. So what does UGS do, for those who don't know?
We have a lot of products that run the desktop, CAD-based products that people design planes, trains, and automobiles with. But that's not the part of the company that I actually work for. I work for more of the data management side. And so I think everybody's familiar with a piece of Microsoft technology that comes on a CD and you load it on a desktop and you play it or run it or whatever. But we're more involved in enterprise application software, where we use a SQL Server database in the data center, business logic in the data center, a web server in the data center, and then just a client on the desktop. And so there's a lot of stuff that's happening below the scenes that nobody ever sees, because that's what we do for a living. We're the stuff that's supposed to work flawlessly without any incidents, and where all downside is terminal. And so this Microsoft partnership for us is really leveraging all that stuff that the Microsoft guys do at each of the tiers. .NET web servers with IIS, SQL Server 2005 in the database, some .NET server code to start and stop the server, so that as you log in and you're doing stuff, the server does the right thing and responds appropriately. So it's just Microsoft scoop the nuts.
Excellent. And so what do you think? So you've been using a lot of managed code then? So
our history is really seeing C++ code.
Sure.
And so we haven't fully made that jump to all the way to managed code yet.
Okay.
So one of the things that we've been doing lately as part of the partnership is that we finally got one of your big products, Teamcenter, Teamcenter Engineering, certified with SQL 2005. And not only for Microsoft, but also I think for your customers as well, is a great win. As a matter of fact, last week you and I were at PLM World, and you had a really great statement about that. So maybe you want to sort of rephrase what you said to your customers over there last week.
Yeah, so we had a user group meeting last week in front of about 2,000 customers, and basically the way I positioned it was that I thought SQL Server 2000 was an acceptable database, but that SQL Server 2005 was really a world-class, enterprise scalable database that really was suitable for consideration across any one of our customers.
And something to keep in mind though is that traditionally the Teamcenter Engineering and Teamcenter Enterprise platform runs on SQL. And one of the things that I presented during the conference as well was the results of our performance and scalability test that we ran here in the lab a few months ago. And we discovered that we not only matched the performance of of Oracle database, but we did it with only 25% of the CPU utilization on 32-bit CPUs. So we rock, to say the very least.
I was kind of blown away, really, that we maxed it. We had 5,000 concurrent users, and the reason we had to stop was because we didn't have any more user licenses to simulate the user load, so we had to stop because of that. But at the SQL Server level, it handled 5,000 concurrent users, hitting transactions at the same time, with using like 20-25% of the CPU maximum.
Yep.
We spent a lot of time working over the last 5 years getting SQL Server 2005 to the point where it could scale and compete and really deliver on solutions for our partners. And we're actually really happy to hear that it's actually being deployed now, because for a long time we weren't sure if it was actually going to get out. And so we spent so many late nights working on it that it's nice to hear that it's actually being deployed and helping our customers in the field. We made a lot of improvements that specifically help target these types of scaling solutions, especially in the enterprise. From coming out with a better 64-bit solution, to better memory management, to working on query plans, to figuring out ways to make sure that we scale. We spent a lot of time trying to make sure that that's a seamless integration. Our model is a little different than some of our competitors in that our optimizer has been cost-based for quite a long time, and we generate better query plans. As a result of a lot of that work, you end up with better seamless experience where you don't have to worry about it. It's more of a turnkey operation, and that's what our customers have consistently told us that they want.
You know, we heard that, and you know, we took it with a grain of salt. But I was astounded because when we've done similar concurrent user testing on other databases, one of the most fundamental things we had to do was tune the database properly. And it took an expert that really, really knew that database there to tune it. And with SQL Server, we made like 2 minor tweaks. I mean, it was basically turn it on and go. It was as close to that as you could possibly expect it. So I kind of took those statements with a grain of salt,
Sure.
but it turned out to be pretty close to true.
Fantastic, and that's the result of a lot of the work you've done, right? With that. So can you talk about that briefly, about your query optimization? You're talking about what happens after code is parsed.
Sure. So the area that I specifically work on will take individual commands which are written as SQL text and convert them into an internal form where we go and consider a lot of different alternatives on how to execute them. And a lot of the technology that we've been working on for the past 10 years, through the last couple of releases of SQL Server, has been to develop and really prove out this technology in the field. So there are always things that we're going to be adding and extending into our product to make that work better. But overall, SQL Server 2005, we were able to focus a lot of energy on delivering technology that was new and relevant to our customers. So one of the things that we worked on, for example, was really trying to prove out when we start using memory on 32-bit and 64-bit systems, how can we make sure that we do so in the most efficient way possible? So not just when you have one query executing that it's going to execute efficiently, but if I have 5,000 queries executing at the same time, that it's actually going to work well. And we have a lot of different technologies involved in making that happen, and that's what we spent all of our time really trying to make sure that release had.
Great. Well, it looks like it's,
Yep.
you know, you pulled it off. Way to go.
Yeah.
Cool.
So I have a question for you, Dave. So actually a couple questions. One, now that the relationship has been established, it's public, we know where we're going, what does that really mean for both UGS and your customers in terms of the technical aspect of this relationship?
On the technology side of things, we've already had a SharePoint partnership in place for about 3 years, and so we're kind of continuing to expand that. We have a slice of Team Center that is really a layer on top of SharePoint. So when you deploy this thing that we call Team Center Community, you're deploying Microsoft SharePoint.
Right.
The other thing that I'm really excited about is the Office 12 new capabilities. With Office 11, you know, you could leverage that right-hand task pane per document, but our customers just did not tolerate us modifying the contents of their documents. With Office 12, we've now got that right-hand task pane that's document independent, where I can embed my application logic, my UI, right directly in Office, and I can give that Office user an Office experience where they're sitting out in Office and they're managing and opening their documents, but they've got all the semantics and all the capabilities of the Team Center system right available to them. And from a development point of view, developers can take that same framework and extend my business logic right inside Office as well. So that's a framework that's extensible by our development partners as well.
That's great.
Excellent.
I mean, I think I know the answer to my next question, but I still want to ask it anyway. So you mentioned the SharePoint and Office 2007 functionality that you're very excited about. So what is UGS doing about taking advantages of those things?
Well,
I mean, if you can talk about it.
Sure. The direction there is really with the Office 12 launch, we're putting together some prototypes that'll be released shortly thereafter, so that you can run a lot of your Team Center experience inside of the Office UI. When you see that right-hand task pane, you can kind of see the direction where we're going. You guys have started to embed new things, helpful things in that right-hand task pane appropriate to what I'm doing in my Office task flow. So if you think about a change document, like an engineer wants to do a change request against a product, we want to be able to take that change information and put it right directly inside of Office, so that as you're working on the requirements, as you're working on the specification for that change, the Team Center capability is right there in that Office user interface.
That's fantastic. So it looks like there's a tie between the Office products, the back end, where SQL comes in, as well as other applications. I can definitely see workflow somewhere in the picture.
Yep.
Yeah, and then the actual Office application still had the new ribbon design that you can customize and make it part of Team Center. So it seems like Office then becomes part of one of your rich clients.
Rich client strategy.
Strategy. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, we definitely look at Office as being a smart client, with the way that you guys define a smart client. And so we've started to work on our Team Center ribbon, and so that when you're in an Office product, you can click on the Team Center banner, and then the Team Center toolbar activates, and you can access our backend directly inside of the Office products, as well as the same thing with SharePoint. You know how SharePoint has its network folder, how you can actually navigate SharePoint right directly inside of Windows Explorer. We've also added Team Center as a data source, so that right from every Windows application you can get access to your data that's being managed by Team Center.
Very cool.
Fantastic.
And you know, if you really wanted to get creative and funky, you could build a UI in WPF and host it in Office. Right. You can do that via STO.
That's right.
So you could go, you know, the whole spectrum. That's really awesome that you're utilizing Office as a smart client. Very cool. Well, it is.
Yeah.
Right. It's getting smarter every release.
Well, you know, it also, I mean, not only allows for the, I mean, if you think about it, Office is an application that's everywhere. I mean, everybody knows about Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and Outlook. I mean, Outlook, if you think about it, everybody comes in the morning, the first thing they turn on is Outlook. They want to see their email, task, calendar, whatever they need to do for the rest of the week, right? And so now when you transform or move some of the functionality that before you perhaps had in a separate application, now you move that into your Office application, all of a sudden you can have, right from your Center console, access to your email, your tabs, your calendar, and your Team Center data. So that's fantastic. And then on top of that, you also help UGS on the other side to cost R&D money. Because then you can just say, okay, Microsoft, you take over the ownership of all this
leverage your deployment model, leverage your extensibility model, all of those capabilities. I can just ride your investment and leverage what you already guys are doing.
That's fantastic. So when in terms of the partnership, I think that's key. I mean, really key for customers and for Microsoft to be able to show this the type of work that you guys are doing with this stuff.
So now, without getting into too gory specific details for obvious reasons, I mean, it's business, but what does a partnership really mean? Like, I mean, you know, you evangelize to customers all the time, right, to leverage using, say, WPF or something, right? That's not necessarily a partnership.
Right.
So what does this mean? Like, what does this an alliance mean?
Well, there's a...
To the average person who doesn't know, you know, who's not in business.
I mean, obviously, Microsoft, as well as any public company, the main focus of that company is to provide value add to the shareholders. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that we're looking at this relationship is, I think, we believe that Microsoft and UGS synergy can provide a tremendous amount of value to Microsoft shareholders, as well as UGS. Well, UGS is a private company, so it's slightly different, but to Microsoft shareholders. Because the specific industry in which UGS plays, which is the PLM space, over the next 2 to 3 years, is approximately anywhere between $14 to $16 billion market, depending of which analyst you read. Regardless of, if you think about it, if you can tap on 2%, 3%, 4% of that market by doing the right partnership with the right industry leaders in that space, that's fantastic. So that's what it really means for Microsoft, at least from the business perspective. And then from the technology perspective is very obvious. Our technology gets advanced, UGS can lower their R&D, their profits can rise, and it's a win-win situation for everybody.
So, it's not a development comment, but from the business side, mm-hmm. In the past quarter, we've had about 50 customers on the SQL Server 2005 platform. So there's 50 more customers that are running Team Center on top of SQL Server 2005 than there were before. So that's pretty exciting. Yeah. But the partnership is really about the business side of it, the marketing side, the sales side, the technology side. A lot of our traditional aerospace and automotive customers that traditionally use Windows, that traditionally have Windows on the desktop, but Unix in the data center, a lot of their hardware is at end of life, and they're looking to do a hardware refresh. Sure. And so now we're going into those companies to say, look, you can use Windows web servers, you can use Windows business logic servers, and almost irrespective of your size, I mean, the largest corporations in the world rarely have 5,000 concurrent users at the same time hitting a back end. That's a big corporation that has 5,000 concurrent users hitting a database back end. So as soon as we need to get some more licenses so we can test more users. But and again, that's not a Microsoft issue. That's the load cannon software that we use.
Okay.
But now we can go in with a Windows solution at the web server, at the business logic server, at the database server, and feel confident that hey, let's refresh that technology on a low-cost solution, on a solution that you're going to be very happy with.
Yeah.
And it's also kind of obvious. It's an obvious thing to say that it's also reaffirmation that the technology is good.
Yep.
And worthy,
Oh,
right?
definitely.
Yeah, it's a validation.
I mean, that's important.
Yeah, it's a validation of the technology stack, top to bottom.
Sure.
And that's one of the things that makes it exciting for us to come into work every day. As developers, we work on this stuff, and it sometimes takes years, and then we turn around and to actually see it go out in the field like this and be proven out by our partners is a wonderful feeling, and it's something that makes it easy for us to come into work every day.
Sure. Now, which actually brings up a good point, because with Vista and Office and SQL taking so long between releases, people on the outside who aren't really involved in the development process are sort of like, what the heck's going on? Why does it take so long? So as a developer working on exceptionally hard problems, right, optimizing queries in a database, can you elaborate a little bit on, so is it because sometimes what you're doing, what the customer needs changes as you're developing it, let's say, maybe?
There's a combination of things, and some of them are honest mistakes that we go through, and we start on a project and it turns out to be a lot harder than we thought it might be. In other cases, there are business decisions made that we want to sync up with another release. If you recall, we released SQL Server 2005 at the same time as Visual Studio, and that was actually a good thing because we were able to better integrate the CLR code into the product, but it also meant that we didn't necessarily get to go out as quickly as we wanted to. In other cases, we were able to use that time to go out and prove that we could scale in dimensions that we weren't able to scale as easily in SQL Server 2000, or would require more handholding in SQL Server 2000 to actually scale. And so we used that time to make the system better, and in many ways we were successful. In other places, there are things that pop up that you never really realize. For example, many Microsoft customers had 32-bit hardware, and that's been the common practice for the industry, especially when SQL Server 2005 was out. That was really the only option. We didn't have at SQL Server 2000 RTM 64-bit solution, and our hardware vendors worked very hard, and we had a 64-bit solution for SQL Server 2000, but it came out after the initial release. Later on, as customers took on bigger and bigger problems with our product set, it became obvious that the largest solutions were going to have to be 64-bit in order to really be successful, both because of the memory limitations of 32-bit and because sometimes the hardware just wasn't available to be scaled to that level for the smaller servers. You couldn't get enough CPUs, for example, on 32-bit platforms. So we found that this was a very interesting shift, and that we didn't start off thinking that it was going to be as important as it was. We knew that there were going to be 64-bit customers, but we didn't believe that the vast majority of our customers would be able to buy 64-bit hardware at an affordable price point. And the hardware vendors have been great in actually delivering solutions that are affordable. And I think this is one of the things that's going to make us very competitive in the marketplace in delivering solutions to allow customers to scale up as their data needs increase. So whenever you get more licenses for testing our software, I'm very hopeful that we'll be able to actually get more than 5,000 and hopefully a lot more.
Oh, we know we can get more than 5,000. As I said, the limitation was literally just the license issue.
Right.
I mean, because
and when I say we tested 5,000 concurrent users, I think you can feel pretty good about that, because I think there's ways you can cheat with user load. You can get one machine and one database server and say, oh, an average query looks about like this, and you just do SQL to hit the database, and you say, oh, ergo, because I've done my mathematics, this is like this many users.
Right.
But the way that we do it was we had banks of business logic servers, banks of load balanced web servers, banks of load cannons that were actually simulating like real user transactions. And what we do is we break it down to 70% reads, 30% writes to the database. Some people opening 100-part assemblies, some people open 1,000-part assemblies, and a real mixed bag. So it's like the real thing. So we can go to a customer and say, look, this database can scale. And so that's the reason that it takes this additional licensing software from this company
Right.
because it really is a simulated user environment.
We're not just running the same query millions of times.
Exactly. Exactly.
And we've actually seen that. A lot of our customers have been trying more sophisticated workload generators and trying different ways to stress our system. And we don't always succeed the first time, right? That's why we have partnerships, is that we can go look at these things and make sure that over time we have that relationship with our enterprise customers and that we're able to make sure that we have a long-term commitment to delivering software that will solve your business problem and make both of us some money, hopefully.
Yep, that's the idea.
Yep.
So, one thing that you mentioned that was quite interesting is the problems that creep in. And a lot of people really don't understand the process thing. You and I were talking right before you showed up here with a camera. Precisely about some of those issues, because a lot of people don't understand that, to develop a product as complicated as SQL, for example, or Exchange or Team Center, the amount of variables and the technology and the manpower that goes behind it is tremendous. And just trying to make the choices between, well, on this hardware and this configuration, this product behaves this way, but if the customer is using something else, how do we fix or account for that? It's very complicated. The number of permutations is enormous. So trying to put all that stuff together in such a way that at the end of the day you can say, well, we're ready to ship and we're willing to take the risk that we're not going to be the best on X, Y, Z, but we can fix it later. Is a great choice.
And then throw in the C word, compatibility, right? You can't expect your enterprise customers, really any customer, to throw away the asset they've had for earlier versions.
That's correct.
That takes a lot of engineering time and effort.
Right, making sure that you get the same basic experience after you upgrade from one release to the next is an important problem. And a lot of our enterprise customers depend on that working. And it doesn't always work perfectly when you first go out and look at it. A lot of these are very complex systems. They're maybe not as complicated as the space shuttle or something, but they are very, very complicated in the sense that one smart person couldn't get the whole problem in their head. It takes hundreds of developers thinking about problems, talking them through, trying to figure out in this particular hardware configuration what happens if I take and put on a faster disk array, or what happens if I put a better SAN on my back end. Does that make the system run better or not? And usually what you end up having to do is iterate and find a whole series of performance bottlenecks, identify them, determine what the fix is going to be, and then proceed by introducing a fix and then finding the next roadblock. And eventually you're going to get to 5,000 users if you work on it long enough. And that's what we spent a lot of time working on in the last few releases of SQL Server 2000, 2005. And we're going to be continuing to work on with our partners going forward.
Outstanding. Very cool. So this is great, right?
Yeah. So what else do you want our Channel 9 viewers to know about?
Well, I think it's clear what the alliance means.
Yeah.
Right? We have a new, powerful, talented company that's made basically gave the thumbs up to our technology, which is nice, and have been honest about how much it is better than, say, previous version, which is great. Honesty is great.
Yeah.
But it's not that Windows 2000 was a bad product. It's just this is a better one.
Right.
That's right.
Which actually brings up an interesting point, because SQL doesn't run in a vacuum, right? You have dependencies on the general purpose operating system you run on. And so, there should be, with Longhorn Server, maybe even some other benefits, perhaps. I mean, are you working with so do you work, for example, with the Windows team?
We talk with a number of different teams inside of SQL Server, inside of Microsoft, from other teams inside of SQL Server that are in the same box that are not part of the engine, to Office, to SharePoint, to the Windows team, and we'll work with them on different problems, and oftentimes we'll work on a specific scaling solution. For example, back in, I believe it was SQL Server 2000, or one of the service packs of Windows 2003, we introduced a technology called scatter gather reading, where we could take a block of contiguous memory and write it out to a series of disjoint disk blocks, and we could also take a series of contiguous disk blocks and read them into a series of disjoint blocks of memory. And this happened to actually very, very importantly maps some technologies that we use down in our storage engine to be more efficient. And so we can take and generate new ideas and then work them through the entire technology stack to come up with a better solution for our customers overall. And they see that as better performance or better scalability. And we try to make sure that our technology will work on previous releases of the operating system as much as possible, and then to make sure you get that added benefit whenever you upgrade. So going forward, we'll be doing this, and some of the technologies that they're adding into the Windows Server product will also benefit us, from how they manage memory to figuring out improvements in their file system. There's definitely always something there which you'll get, and the benefits are there. So the 64-bit editions are definitely something where we're very happy with the improvements they put in, and whenever they do scaling improvements, we see that in terms of our customer experience.
Outstanding.
And then one of the things that we do is once as a team that works with partners like UGS, you guys have those meetings, you discover those things, and you put that into your development roadmap. And then individuals like myself, we come in, we meet with the SQL team or the Windows team, etc., and then we understand what the technology and what the impact of that technology is. And then we go and talk to Dave and say, hey, Dave, these are new cool stuff that we're working on, and this is the impact that's going to have for you and your customers, and this is the better stuff that you can take advantage of. And that's how the relationship works, right? It's an engine that on a cycle, every 6 or 7 months, we get together, for a couple of days, and we go through all the stuff that we've discovered internally within Microsoft. Hey, Dave, we discovered by live communication server or new performance in Windows, or we're working on this new cool stuff. And then we figure out where their technology roadmap aligns and where ours align, and then we try to identify what are the things that we have created internally within Microsoft that we can give to UGS to build upon.
Right.
And that's how products get better and better, and performance, and your customers get happier and happier, and somebody's wallet gets fatter and fatter.
The point you made about SQL Server not running in a vacuum, I think, is really accurate, because it really was the combination of, and the stability, robustness of Windows Server 2003 initially, and then SQL Server 2005 on top of that, that really makes me feel comfortable that I can go to any of my enterprise customers and say, I'm comfortable with you having Windows scoops and nets in the data center. Of course, everybody already has Windows on the desktop, but it was really those two things that made, I think, were the difference makers for Windows in the data center.
Outstanding. Well, this is great. Glad to hear that this alliance has happened.
Oh, it's fantastic. I mean,
Absolutely.
from our perspective, we can be happier. So it's
Cool.
fantastic.
Now, and as a partner, though, you have direct access to brains like this over here.
Absolutely.
And you find a bug or anything, you get some sort of a direct pipeline where you can help them work out.
We've used that extensively with the SharePoint team. We've been working really hand in glove with the SharePoint team for the last 3 years.
Yep.
And we see enhancements that we requested in the new versions of SharePoint, and then also the ability that when we have a challenge to be able to work directly with the SQL Server team. So that partnership kind of opens up all those capabilities for us.
Fantastic.
Yeah, we love talking to customers because we learn a whole lot about how our product works and sometimes doesn't work in the field by getting them into our labs and trying it out on hardware very similar to what their customers would see. We have whole labs dedicated to this that we use extensively, and every couple of weeks I'm in with a different customer looking at a new problem that they've got and trying to figure out, how are we going to make the next version of our product better? And the sum of all of those add up to a good customer experience if you do that properly. And that's what we've been working on. That's why we have the resources there, and that's why we love working with our partners.
Fantastic. On that note,
Well,
thank you.
Well, thank you. I mean, it's a great opportunity. Thanks, Dave.
Absolutely.
Oh,
Thank you. Yeah, we're excited about it. Great. I think it's a great opportunity for all of us.
Yeah.
Pleasure to talk to you guys at Channel 9.
Fantastic. We're glad to have you on.